In the Book of Mormon, in 2 Nephi chapter 15, we see this vineyard.
It's not just about grapes, right?
It's an allegory.
This vineyard is the house of Israel.
God's people.
And God, he's the vineyard owner.
He planted them, these choice vines, looking forward to righteousness.
He built a fence, gathered out the stones, even built a tower.
Verse 2 talks about all that.
He really went the extra mile. But what did he get in return?
Wild grapes, sour grapes.
Those wild grapes, they're a symbol.
A symbol of the people turning away from God.
Their unrighteousness.
It's like when a parent watches their child making bad choices.
Knowing they'll lead to hardship.
Like any loving parent, God doesn't just watch.
There are consequences.
Verse 5 says the protection is gone.
The walls broken down, leaving everything exposed.
Briars and thorns.
Choking the life out of the vineyard.
No rain to nourish the vines.
The desolation.
2 Nephi doesn't shy away from the specifics.
Verse 8 talks about their obsession with material possessions.
Woe unto them that join house to house, till there can be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth.
Like they're trying to build a security blanket.
Out of material things.
Completely missing the point.
Of true security found in God.
We still see that struggle today.
The constant pursuit of more.
Bigger houses, fancier cars.
Never truly satisfied.
Like we've lost sight of what matters.
And then in verse 11, their indulgence.
Woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, and wine inflame them.
Living for pleasure, fleeting happiness.
Forgetting lasting joy from a righteous life.
Their feasts are filled with music and laughter.
But they've forgotten who provides that bounty.
Regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. Verse 12.
Surrounded by God's blessings, yet they fail to see his hand.
Blindness.
Leading them astray.
And straying has consequences.
Therefore, my people are gone into captivity, because they have no knowledge. And their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst. Verse 13.
Starving for knowledge.
Thirsting for living water.
That only God provides.
And without it, they wither away.
Verse 14 paints a picture of what awaits them.
Therefore, hell hath enlarged herself and opened her mouth without measure. And their glory and their multitude and their pomp, and he that rejoiceth shall descend into it.
A path of destruction.
Wide open.
Pride and arrogance will be their downfall.
Verse 15 says, the mighty will be humbled.
The proud brought low.
No one escapes those consequences.
But amidst this judgment, there's a declaration.
Verse 16. But the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness.
God's justice.
Absolutely.
His holiness unwavering.
Verses 26 through 29 describe a force, an ensign.
And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly.
Unstopped.
Arrows, dot sharp, and all their bows bent. Their horses' hooks, like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. They're roaring like a lion.
Vivid imagery.
Seriousness of turning away from God's laws.
And the consequences in verse 30.
And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if they look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof.
Our choices have consequences.
Not just for us.
But the world around us.
Like a ripple effect.
The choices we make, the fruit we produce.
It can impact generations.
What kind of fruit are we producing in our lives?
It makes you think. 2 Nephi 15 doesn't just leave us with doom and gloom.
It's also an invitation.
The call to step back, reconsider.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing we have the power to choose.
A different way forward.
And it begins with introspection.
Examining our actions, our motivations.
What are the wild grapes we're cultivating in our own lives?
Are we so focused on material wealth that we neglect our spiritual growth?
Are we numbing ourselves to those quiet promptings?
With fleeting pleasures.
The allegory of the vineyard.
A stark reminder that we are accountable.
For the choices we make.
Every thought, every word, every action.
Contributes to the harvest we reap.
So how do we shift from wild grapes to a harvest of righteousness?
Where do we even begin?
Aligning our hearts and minds with God's will.
Verse 12, remember.
But they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands.
We need to cultivate a deeper awareness of God's presence.
Recognize his hand in our blessings.
Seek his guidance in our decisions.
Changing our perspective.
Seeing the world through faith and gratitude.
Acknowledging the source of all that is good.
True joy and fulfillment.
Come from living in harmony with God's principles.
Those wild grapes may offer temporary sweetness,
but they lead to bitterness and emptiness.
The Book of Mormon is full of examples
Individuals who turned away from those wild grapes.
and embraced a life of righteousness.
Inspiring stories.
Alma the Younger
Actively persecuted the church.
and became one of its most powerful advocates.
No matter how far we've strayed,
Repentance and change are always within reach.
or the anti-Nephi Lehis,
Laid down their weapon.
committed to peace and nonviolence.
Unwavering commitment to Christ, even in persecution. Their stories and countless others.
Remind us we're not alone on this path,
We have the support of prophets
ancient and modern.
to guide us towards righteousness,
And most importantly, we have the love and grace of Jesus Christ.
whose atonement gives us strength to overcome our weaknesses.
It's not just about avoiding those wild grapes out of fear
It's about choosing a life that reflects our love for God.
and our desire to follow his teachings.
It's about cultivating gratitude and compassion,
A genuine desire to serve,
letting the light of Christ shine through our actions.
illuminating the path for ourselves and those around us.
2 Nephi chapter 15.
A powerful reminder of aligning our lives with God's will,
It challenges us to look inward
to acknowledge those wild grapes.
and make a conscious effort to cultivate righteousness.
We're not alone in this.
We have the scriptures, the guidance of prophets,
And the love and grace of our Savior, Jesus Christ.
to guide us on this journey,
A journey worth taking
not just for our benefit, but for the blessing of those around us.
for the building of God's kingdom here on earth.
This discussion about the vineyard,
It's not just an ancient story.
it's a reflection of our choices, our lives.
What would a harvest of righteousness look like in today's world?
That's a great question.
The beauty is that the answer is unique for each of us.
However, there are some universal principles.
Like what?
Think about good fruit.
Sweetness, nourishment, beauty.
We can translate these qualities into spiritual terms.
Sweetness is kindness and compassion.
Nourishment as the way we build up and strengthen others.
Through service and support.
Beauty reflected in the integrity and purity of our thoughts and actions.
So it's not just a list of good deeds,
But about cultivating an inner spirit that radiates outward.
influencing every aspect of our lives.
You got it. It's about becoming more Christ-like.
In our thoughts, words, and actions.
A lifelong process, striving to align our will with God's will.
That's where the allegory of the vineyard resonates.
We have a responsibility to cultivate our spiritual growth,
Tend the soil of our hearts and minds.
so we can produce good fruit.
It requires effort.
The vineyard owner in 2 Nephi, verse 2.
Went to great lengths to prepare, protect, and nurture.
We need to be diligent in our spiritual practices.
Studying scriptures, praying, attending church, serving others.
The tools that help us cultivate a righteous life.
We're each given this incredible potential,
This choice vine that God has planted within us.
but it's up to us to nurture it, protect it.
From temptation and the harsh elements of the world.
And when we do, the harvest is truly bountiful.
Not just for ourselves.
But for everyone we touch,
Our righteousness becomes a source of light and strength.
inspiring others to cultivate their own spiritual vineyards.
It's a beautiful image.
A world where everyone strives to produce righteousness.
Creating a collective harvest of love, peace, and joy.
That's the ultimate goal.
To build Zion.
Not just physically, but in our hearts and communities.
To create a society where God's love reigns.
And where each individual flourishes in righteousness.
A powerful vision that gives me hope.
Even in the face of the world's challenges.
We have the power to choose, cultivate, create a better future.
One righteous act, one good fruit at a time.
And as we strive to produce our own harvest of righteousness,
We can inspire others.
and together we can transform the world one vineyard at a time.
That's a thought worth holding on to.
Be sure to follow our podcast and subscribe for more.
This collective harvest of righteousness, how do we know we're on the right track?
That's a good question.
What are the signs?
That we're producing good fruit,
Not just in our own lives.
but in our families and communities.
Think back to the allegory, those wild grapes.
Bitter and undesirable.
They didn't offer any sustenance.
No nourishment.
So for good fruit, the opposite must be true.
Nourishing, life-giving,
Beautiful to behold
and when we apply that,
to our lives and relationships.
we can see the evidence of righteousness.
It's not about outward appearances.
We're checking things off a list
It's about the impact our actions have.
on ourselves and those around us.
So if we're trying to cultivate a righteous life, we should see results.
In how we interact with the world.
Galatians 5:22-23 describes the fruits of the Spirit.
Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance.
Powerful indicators.
But sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees.
When we're so focused on personal growth,
How can we get a broader perspective?
on the fruit we're producing,
Introspection and self-evaluation
regularly taking stock,
of our actions and motivations.
asking ourselves those tough questions.
Am I being kind and compassionate?
Am I contributing to a more peaceful world?
Am I using my talents and resources to lift and support others?
So it's not about feeling good about ourselves.
It's about genuinely making a positive impact
True righteousness is reflected in how we live,
in the choices we make every day.
striving to embody those Christ-like attributes.
Letting his love shine through us.
And when we do that, it creates a ripple effect,
That goes way beyond ourselves.
like planting seeds of righteousness that grow and flourish.
Bearing fruit for generations to come.
This brings us back to 2 Nephi.
It reminds us that we have the power to choose.
What kind of fruit we produce?
We can neglect our spiritual vineyards,
Allowing them to be overrun,
or we can diligently cultivate them.
producing a bountiful harvest.
The choice is ours.
And as we strive to make righteous choices, we can find peace and joy,
Not just in our own lives.
but in the impact we have on the world.
The vineyard analogy is a powerful invitation
To examine our lives,
to identify areas where we might be producing those wild grapes,
and to make a conscious effort.
to cultivate the fruits of righteousness.
It's a journey worth taking.
And as we've discussed today, it's a journey we don't have to take alone.
We have the scriptures, the guidance of prophets,
And most importantly, the love and grace of Jesus Christ.
to guide us every step of the way.
Remember, the harvest of righteousness is a collective effort.
As we each strive to cultivate our own spiritual vineyards.
We contribute to a more beautiful world for all.
That's an inspiring thought to end on.
Be sure to follow our podcast and subscribe for more.